All right, so this video is going to cover a little bit about dealing with scale for Unity or Unreal. Um, let's say you've already started a project. You could also do this before starting, but let's say you've already started and you're not sure how to deal with scale or sort of having a consistent scale in your project. I always like to include a human scale reference of some kind. You can either download a human, you could just model one simply. I'm going to go ahead and bring one in from Maya. I don't think Blender has one by default, but I could be wrong. So I'm going to jump over to Maya and I'm going to go to the Windows menu, to the content browser. And in my case, it immediately navigated to the section I want, but you're looking for the modeling section, sculpting, base meshes, bipeds. And so you can see a bunch of these sort of humans. I'm going to go ahead and just choose human body. I should be able to double click on it. And there you can see it is present in Maya. Now, I don't know what the scale is here, but I'm not going to worry about it yet. I'm working in Blender, so I'm going to go ahead and export this to Blender. File, export, selection, save this to my desktop. I'm going to save it as an OBJ. I'll just call it human scale ref. And the idea is this is something that once you scale correctly in Blender, you could just use for every single project going forward. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and import that into Blender. I don't need the MTL, so I'm going to delete that and just import in the OBJ. This can also, of course, be found in the file import wavefront OBJ section. I'm just using pop-up. And so you can see when it comes in here, I'm going to ignore my model over here for now and first worry about the scale of the human here. So if you don't have your side right panel open in the modeling view, hit N, and that brings it up. And so some things to note when importing and exporting from Blender is you'll often see some kind of X rotation, which probably has burned some of you before when you're sort of bringing stuff in from Blender into Unity, often or Unreal, it often is rotated the wrong way. And I'm going to show you also a way of exporting later on that's going to fix that. But let's deal with scale for now. So I'm going to first off Control A and apply all transforms. This is just going to keep the visible sort of scale and rotation, but it's going to basically zero out everything over here. Now you'll notice when I do that in this case, I'm looking at the Z-axis. Z is up in Blender, and you'll see that it's already set to 1.83 meters. This is actually, kind of like a tall human, but considered sort of a standard height for a human, around 6 feet tall or so. And that's perfect. So at this stage, with all those settings, you could just, if you wanted to, just export this out and just have that as a sort of general reference for every new project. Now you'll notice that now that I have this, let me go ahead and move it off to the side just so I can see the model I was already working on. Clearly, this model is too small. It could be that maybe the model was too large, but you want to use this as a reference. So now I could go ahead and say scale this stuff up and get it. This is just sort of like a modular interior, so I can get that the way I want it. I'm going to go ahead and actually put these back to my original. This was the original scale. But, whatever you find to be appropriate for your human, okay? So now that I've got all that set, I want to talk about exporting. I typically, by the way, once I get my stuff scaled, I'll also apply all transforms to all of those things. Again, Control A for each of those. All right, now I'm not going to be exporting the human, so I'm just going to go ahead and hide that for now. But these now have been scaled correctly. Now, if I were to just go ahead and select these, for instance, file, export, OBJ, you probably wouldn't have great results when it comes to scale and, again, sometimes rotation if importing into one of the engines. I'm going to utilize a free add-on, or actually, now that we're in Blender 4.2, that's more or less the latest version, they've updated add-ons to call them extensions. Same idea. They are slightly different when it comes to loading them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Edit Preferences panel in Blender, and you have a new-ish category over here called Get Extensions. This is, if you want to work this way, you have to have an internet connection. I'm going to go to Get Extensions. I'm going to start typing in asset. And you can see that there is one here called ACT Game Asset Creation Toolset. This is this awesome thing that's been around for a few years. It's, again, really specifically for sort of prepping your models for game engines. I'm going to go ahead and click on Install. You may have, depending on where you are, some like configuration that you need to do. There is also a way to just do a Google search for this, download it, and then in that case, you can just go to add-ons. This is just a different category. Click on this little drop down and go to install from disk. That way you could do basically the same thing, but installing it from a file. All right, so now that I've got that created, you see how I have on my side panel here a bunch of little tabs, and I've got a new tab called ACT, Asset Creation Toolkit, or Toolset, I forget what it stands for. And this is great. You have a lot of other stuff over here, but I want you to note the section for export tools. I'm going to go ahead and just collapse everything else. Now, you can export either FBX or OBJ. We're just going to stick with FBX here. This is, of course, a nice file format for including things like your materials if you've assigned them in Blender, and also if you ever have any like rigs in animation, FBX is going to include them. So you'll see that. You'll also see below target engine. We got Unity, we've got Unreal. So choose the one that you're using. I'm not sure exactly what the sort of changes are, but I'm going to go ahead and just choose Unity. It will automatically apply or configure all of the, the transforms as needed. If you want to triangulate your mesh at this stage, you can. What I like to do at this stage is also click on Custom Export Settings. By the way, you're going to want to select any and all objects that you're going to export. So the idea here is if I have 3 separate meshes, I can include them all in a single FBX file. If you want them to do them individually, select them individually. So under Custom Export Options, I'm going to leave those things alone, but I will also want to, ignore that one unless you want to mess around with those settings. I wanted to note the custom export path. There we go. And this allows you to specify exactly where you want to export this to. Otherwise, it's going to choose some random default location. So that if I click on this, I can either just save these, for instance, to the desktop, my documents, to your OneDrive, or you could even specify your Unity project file and put it directly where you need your meshes. So I'm just going to keep it simple and save this to my desktop, accept. And then the idea is, you see a little bottom button here that says Export FBX to Unity. So for the purposes of exporting to a game engine, you're not using the file menu now to export. We're going to be using this little export button right here. And so once you do that, if you want, you can click on Open Export Directory. In this case, you can see I've got a few objects that have been put right on my desktop: floor, wall, and load. So hopefully that helps you with scaling and exporting meshes for a game.